we continue this lesson through John, we've come to find out after the previous teachers have taught that as Christ's ministry grew, his ministry was growing, people started taking a different look at him, started taking more notice on him. And they realized that he was a lot different from any other teacher that they'd ever heard before. For instance, Nicodemus, he was a Pharisee. He recognized God's unmistakable power through Christ and only wanted to know more about his message. He came to him by night, wanted to know. Nicodemus was well educated in Jewish tradition. John the Baptist recognized Jesus as the only one who had come from above. And as Zach taught, he was overjoyed to put all this on Jesus. He was going to step behind. The Samaritan woman recognized just after a few minutes of talking with Jesus that he was more than a prophet. And as a result, she went back after a few-minute conversation. Her whole family was saved. So in this lesson, you got a nobleman from Capernaum recognized Jesus as a healer who could save his son. All four were right in their way of thinking, but really, all four of them really didn't see him for who he was yet. They didn't grasp his true identity. So as we go through this lesson, there's about three things I want you to get out of it. First, when we believe God, our faith allows him to operate in any way he chooses. That's if we stay out of the way. Because oftentimes we try to dictate how God operates in our life. We always say, God, I want you to do this for me. This is how I'd like for you to do it. This is the way I'd like for you to do it. And when you want to do it. But that's not how he operates. We want to give to God step-by-step instructions on how our faith should be. God isn't bound by our ways. He's not bound by our methods, our schedules. That's not how faith works. Our ways are not his ways. His ways are not our ways. I always think of that little boy. Heard Adrian Rogers tell a story about a little boy. He's sitting underneath this big oak tree. He's looking up into the tree with these little tiny acorns all the time. And as he looks over the hill, he's overlooking this big watermelon patch. He sees these big watermelons on these real small vines, these big acorns on this huge tree. He said, God got that all wrong. If I was God, I would have put those big watermelons on those big oak tree limbs. And he said, I'd put those tiny acorns on those watermelon vines. And about that time, an acorn fell from a tree and hit him in the head. He was glad it wasn't watermelon. Secondly, faith acts, and then we see results. Have faith first, and then you see the results. The nobleman, he didn't have the options of waiting to see evidence before he believed. He had to take the steps of faith that were inscribed on his heart in the very moment. But when he did, when he had that faith, he saw results automatically. If all you have in your spiritual life is what you witnessed before you believed, we really don't have much, do we? No. Lastly, in times of difficulty, times of sorrow, unexplained tragedy, faith accepts that God is at work even before we can see what he's doing. Sometimes that's hard to accept. Yeah. Sometimes it's still hard to accept.
Yeah, you've been there, ain't you, buddy?
My anniversary was last Sunday. I got married right here in front of this, or behind this pulpit. Alex was in my wedding. That was his birthday. So every anniversary we have bittersweet, because I sit and think of where my nephew would have been 19 this year. It's still hard for me to deal with. I deal with it good. I know God has a plan. Alex left a testimony. The last thing he put on Facebook was an invitation to God.
Yeah.
And I just sitting back there a while ago, I was thinking I had the pleasure and honor of coming to the altar with him. My mom, Richard, and Alex prayed right here. So I have the assurance that I'll see him again. That's the faith I have right now, the faith I gotta stick to. We often pray, God, you know my need, deal with it according to your will, but when we don't see the results,
Yep.
we automatically assume God's not working on it.
Yeah.
But really, while you were praying, God had a plan. Verse 45. Then when he was coming to Galilee, the Galileans received him, having seen all the things that he did at Jerusalem at the feast, for they also went unto the feast. So Jesus came again into Cana of Galilee, where he made the water into wine. And there was a certain nobleman whose son was sick at Capernaum. And almost as soon as Jesus arrived in Cana, he receives this request from Capernaum. The request came from a certain nobleman. The word nobleman means king's man. The nobleman's son was sick in the nearby city of Capernaum. Verse 47, when he heard that Jesus was come into Judea, into Galilee, he went unto him and besought him that he would come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. Then said Jesus unto him, except ye see signs and wonders, you will not believe. The nobleman saith unto him, Sir, come down ere my child die. So we hear the plea from the nobleman. He wasted no time. And as soon as he heard Jesus was in the vicinity, his faith let him seize on the opportunity. You think about it, his son dies, his son's laying there dying. We don't know what medical treatment he was provided. We don't know if he sought doctors, any kind of medication. But when his son's at the worst point,
Yeah.
when he seeks Jesus. So the nobleman rushed to Cana to plead with Jesus that he would come down and heal his son, for he was sick and at the point of death. By reading, the nobleman's plea didn't go very far with Jesus. Jesus looked at the man, kind of ignored his request, and challenged the ground of his faith. Jesus says to him, except ye see signs and wonders, you will not believe. So he's talking to this nobleman, but there's also other people around him. And I'm sure that message just wasn't for the nobleman. He wanted other people to hear that too. Except you see signs and wonders, you won't believe. Which means they want to see a miracle before they'll believe.
Yeah.
Signs and wonders underline two chief aspects of the miracles. Signs suggested that spiritual aspects of the miracles, the fact that the miracles were intended to convey some deeper truth, that they prove that he who would perform the miracles would be acting under the authority of God. Wonders were designed to attract attention to the external aspects of miracles. They attracted attention, and they often startled the people who saw them because of their uniqueness. You read that throughout the Bible. So the nobleman was seen by Jesus as a representative of this kind of people whose faith has to be constantly bolstered before they believe.
Yeah.
The nobleman was no doubt disappointed, and I'd say he was somewhat irritated. He comes all this way looking for a miracle, expecting a miracle, and Jesus kind of turns him away, if you read it that way. His boy's dying. He's already at the point of death. He rushed out of his house with a race, with time to find the only one, according to his faith, he knew could help his boy. But to Jesus, it must be frustrating to him if the nobleman and all the bystanders, they're wanting to see a miracle. he's done all this. We've seen how his gospel's progressed out of the last several lessons, but you still have people that really still want to see a miracle before they believe. The first plea for the man, he said, heal my son. But his second one says, my child. Gets deeper. Verse 50, Jesus saith unto him, go thy way, thy son liveth. And the man believed that the word that Jesus had spoken unto him, and he went his way. So in response to the nobleman's plea, Jesus says, go your own way, or go thy way, thy son liveth. Jesus is essentially saying, all right, let's find out whether or not you believe or not. I want you to believe without seeing. The nobleman's 20-some miles from his house, his son's back home. He says, go thy way, thy son liveth. He says, you want me to come to Capernaum, but I don't have to. All I got to do is speak the word. I don't have to, he doesn't have to be physically present to give a miracle or to heal your child. He's not bound by time or distance. You go on home, your son lives. Jesus commanded death to leave the nobleman's son at that very point. Verse 51, as he was now going down, his servants met him and told him, saying, thy son liveth. So now you got his servants that meets him on the way that says the same thing Jesus says, thy son liveth. Verse 52, then inquired he of them the hour when he began to amend, and they said unto him, yesterday at the 7th hour, the fever left him. So the father knew that it was at the same hour in which Jesus said unto him, thy son liveth, and himself believed, and his whole house. And so it wasn't long after the nobleman had his proof that the Lord was worthy of his trust.
Yeah.
When he was on his way home, he saw his servants hurrying toward him because they had news to share with him. Which one would you have been? You just left Jesus. He says, go thy way, your son liveth. You're wondering on the way home. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
You've got that kind of faith, good for you.
Uh-huh.
But I'd still be wondering.
Yeah.
But when I seen my servants coming toward me,
Oh, no.
what am I? Which one are you? Are you thinking that they're coming to tell me my son liveth? Or are they coming to tell me my son's passed?
Yeah, where do you?
I'd be worried about it.
Yeah.
So the exact words that Jesus said to the man, the servants repeats, thy son liveth. The nobleman then began to take notice and compare the notes of what Jesus said and what the servant said. When did he start to get better? He said, remembering that he had left him at death's door, dying. It was yesterday in the 7th hour, they said, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The 7th hour would be 1 o'clock, which was the precise hour in which Jesus had said to him, thy son liveth. Now he had complete confirmation that Jesus indeed was the Son of God. John states that the nobleman himself believed. Not only him, he shared it with his family.
Yeah.
His family rejoiced that the son lives, so now his whole house believes. Verse 50, he believed the promise, but now he believed the Lord's person. Verse 54, this is again the second miracle that Jesus did when he was come out of Judea into Galilee. I'll close with this, about how faith progresses, how we would want it to. This man had a crisis faith in the beginning. His son's dying. Who knows, he may have been like the woman with the issue of blood, spent all her life saving. Didn't get any help out of it when she touched the hem of his garment. So he has a crisis faith. He's about to lose his son. He had nothing else to depend on. At this point, He wanted to seek Jesus. His crisis faith became confident faith because he believed the word and had peace in his heart.
Yeah.
His confident faith became confirmed faith. The boy was completely healed. His healing was at the exact time Jesus first said, "Thy son liveth." The nobleman believed. He shared his faith with his family, and as a result, the entire house believed. That's a contagious faith.
Amen. Yeah.